Hello, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith at Nonnatus.org. And DeSantis here with my wonderful co-host, Carlos Solorzano. This is our podcast for families in Christ. It's the Our Lady, Our Mother podcast, where we really try to focus on a topic of trauma or crisis in family life. And we really try also to center on the fact of the Blessed Mother and her intercession for all of those different things that happen to families. So, on this episode, we're going to focus on the crisis of divorce. As we always do at the beginning of every podcast, Carlos, I always love when you tell our audience a little bit about you. So please do share.
South Point Catholic High School in Tucson. So I've been teaching theology at the high school level for this will be year 30 this fall. And I also deliver talks at parishes and conferences because you and I are part of Catholic Speakers Organization. And also I do a little bit of writing and some fiction, and a lot of it's faith-based. But even if I noodle with some other things, I always kind of try to throw some faith topics in there, or just those really big things that people I think need to focus more on because we always need to, I guess, aim to live the ideal life that we should have. And that's why actually I really am inspired by people that really, talk a lot about how they have their routine to always improve themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And little apologies there for a slight technical difficulty at the beginning of what you said. I think what you were saying probably is that you are a Catholic author, a speaker, and also a religion teacher for so many years, right? A
Yes,
theology teacher
correct.
in the high school level. So just wanted to make sure that our audience was able to hear that part of it.
Okay.
I'm so blessed and honored to be doing this podcast with you because what we're doing for those who are new to the podcast is that every month when we meet for for our taping is we're focusing on a different area. Last month we talked about separation, marital separation, which sometimes can go kind of either way, whether sometimes they work it out and they're able to do counseling or get help and be able to come back into the marital sacrament. And then sometimes it doesn't work that way, and the couple does go through a divorce and even an annulment later on. So what we want to do is just talk to you, our audience, maybe those of you who are going through something or you know someone. Um, Also, this is marriage is a sacrament, and I know you, Carlos, better than anybody, understand what that means as a theology teacher. And when people are separated, obviously they're still, it is still a sacrament either way, and until there is an annulment. So I just want to clarify that. Did you want to talk a little bit about that piece of it? Because I know you're very knowledgeable about the sacrament of marriage, and as Catholics and as people who are trying to help others, we honor that too. We understand fully the beauty of this sacrament, but within our Catholic faith, also, we know that there are situations sometimes that unfortunately they discover that there was something from the very beginning that wasn't quite right, that there wasn't everything that was needed to make it a sacrament. So I didn't know, Carlos, if you wanted to share anything that you wanted to say on that.
I sure. I remember um, my wife and I went through the marriage preparation in the church. And when we had our third meeting, the priest had actually told us at the end of the second meeting that he was going to ask us a very important question at the beginning of the third meeting. So all he basically told us was make sure you guys come ready to really to be upfront and honest about whatever comes up. So he asked us at the beginning of the meeting, and my wife and I were even talking about it before that. We're like, well, what do you think it's going to be? And sometimes even with a little bit of a laugh. And I think that was our way of dealing with the tension of it. He said, is there anything that either of you haven't told the other that if they knew right now, they might change their mind about getting married? And he said, if you need me to leave the room, I will. And if I leave the room and I come back in, all I have to know is whether or not we're going to continue with this process. And if the answer is no, I don't need to know why. I just need to know what we're doing. And he kind of politely said, this is the moment you need to like put on your big boy and big girl pants, and if there's something you need to fess up. And you were talking earlier about annulments, and of course the idea behind an annulment is that the marriage was null or invalid because, say, someone did not fully disclose something that, if they knew, they would have reconsidered marrying the person. And I think that what we have to really look at when it comes to marriage, and in today's world, there's just so much, hoopla, like everything about the party and all. Like I think we mentioned last podcast, people get ready for the wedding, they don't get ready for the marriage. And I'm going on 28 years. We're taping this in July, and I'll be at 28 years August 1st. And I've learned a lot about marriage through my own failures and just my own pain, and not just of myself and being a husband that fell short, but moments that my wife really hurt me, and I had to forgive her. And the thing I've learned, and I've shared this with my students, is I tell them, I want you to consider a few things. And the first one is, what is that one thing that someone could do to you? And I won't know the answer because obviously it's up to the person, that you would probably not forgive most people for doing it. And if you think about it, you forgive in marriage because you love the person so much. And of course, if they love you the same, they're, when they seek reconciliation, they're sincere. Because that person, you would work hard to work that out, and for different reasons. It's not just for the relationship, which is extremely important, but if you have children, and of course, you want to do whatever you can for your kids. And I've also learned that, that saying, I'm marrying you, not your family, that's not true. Because, I'm lucky enough where I'm close to my in-laws. So, my wife and I, we don't have the perfect marriage, and we've certainly been on shaky ground ourselves. And, when there were moments I thought maybe we're going to split up, it wasn't just losing her, with the idea of losing her was devastating. But, the idea of not being able to be close to her family anymore was also shaking me up. And then later in life, when we had, our kids, it was just like, okay, this is obviously affecting them too. Then the other thing I brought up, what I bring up to my students is, you are going to have the most uncomfortable conversations of your life with this person. And it not necessarily the arguments or the, can I forgive you? But also when you're sharing who you are with this person, you're going to share things about yourself that you don't tell people because it's something that you're ashamed of. It's something that you don't like to think about because maybe someone really hurt you. You're going to be vulnerable. And, obviously that person needs to make you feel safe enough to do that. So, and just you're going to share a lot of painful moments with them. Like one of the most, I'll be honest about this because obviously a lot of couples, they're very private about their relationships, and they should be. When my son was diagnosed with autism, he was in the fourth grade at the time. So I think he was about 10. And we both could sense something was, I'm not going to say wrong, I'll say different about him. And once we had a meeting with the therapist and we got the official diagnosis, we went out to dinner. And, there's a lot you don't know. You have to learn the person, and you have to go through things and figure out where they are on the spectrum and all that. And I was very emotional. I was extremely scared. I was scared for him, like, because as a parent, your first thought is, well, what happens when I'm gone? And if your child is vulnerable in any way, you're absolutely scared to death about it. And just having her there to be with me and to, reassure me and comfort me was great. But the most important thing was whether I was emotional, whether I was angry, whether I was, however I was feeling, I didn't have to feel threatened by her. Like I didn't have to worry about, oh, she's going to look at me and say, oh, well, what kind of man are you? How could you? No, that's not the case. You know the person, you know how they are, and you accept that. And so in that relationship, you need to have that security of knowing that you can be you with them, and you should be you with them. Like they should be the person that gets that real personal you, that because you're married. I mean, you're a couple. I mean, you chose to become family, and then you have your own family, and it's like this is really, that's the intimacy that people don't focus on. They focus on, sex, and they focus on, just the exciting party stuff, if you will. It's like, no, this is because, like, as this one way of looking at intimacy is where they actually separate it and put it into different words: in, to, me, see. So
Wow, I
that's what
never
it's
heard that
supposed to be.
before. That's amazing. I mean, that's
Yes.
something to really ponder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you gave us a lot to think about there. And
Thank you.
I love what you said, how the priest handled when you and your wife went in
Mm-hmm.
for your, I think it's called a PNI,
Yeah.
the prenuptial interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he handled it very well because you're right. It has to be something that we have to really reveal who we are to the other person before we get married.
Mm-hmm.
And that will save us a lot of heartaches, won't it? I mean, and think about those people who are marrying someone who maybe has sort of a hidden life or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
the fact that the priest pulled you aside and gave you time and said, listen, talk about it now before I come in back into this room,
Mm-hmm.
I think was a good thing. And I'm sure there are other priests do the same. So we want to address you, our audience, who maybe that happened to you somehow, some way. Maybe uh, you got married and you thought everything was fine, and later on, whether it be a few years later or many, many years later, found out that there was something that wasn't right from the very beginning. And maybe you are in the process of getting an annulment, which will be the topic of our next podcast. We're going to talk more about the details of annulments and things like that, so that you have those those details that you need to know in terms of if you do need to apply and talk to a priest or your bishop about it. But as far as the divorce, the foundation has also done a lot of other podcasts in the past. I just want to mention that because we spent quite a lot of time doing full series just on divorce. So if you go to the Philly Nonatus YouTube channel to our playlist, you'll see a couple different ones. One that I did with our board president, Mickey Kelly, which was 10 episodes on how to heal after divorce. And another one that I did with our former vice president of the board, Rose Sweet, who's also a wonderful Catholic author and speaker. She and I did an audio podcast on the same channel. I'm just mentioning that because this is one podcast that we're doing on divorce, but we also have a lot of other resources too. And also on our website at nonatus.org, we have a whole page for the divorced. But I can certainly say one bit of advice that I give to you who are listening is to learn more, because there is so much more to learn about how to heal, right? I mean, Carlos, I know for you, you're a teacher and you know a lot of families that have gone through this. I didn't know if you wanted to share just any of your experiences, maybe some of those successful stories of people who got through it and they were able to manage. Because I know that there's a lot of very difficult situations where there's a divorce and the children really suffer. And we hate to see that. So I don't know if you want to share any of those experiences.
Yeah. I think the most important ones that I learned from was a lot of times I would find out stuff more from the parents. When it was interesting because they'll come to a parent conference and we'll end up saying nothing about their kid's grade. It's about, they'll just start talking to me. And I think a lot of it happens because the kids will go home and tell the parents what we talk about in class. And I guess they kind of want to talk to me about it. And what I found is there's parents who, they'll tell me that, okay, my son or daughter, they're kind of struggling because, we got divorced a few years ago, and, they're adjusting, and, we got divorced when they were, say, a sophomore or junior in high school. So, they're, most of their life, their parents were married. So it's like, how did this happen? And, I listen. And then after they'll kind of tell me about their kid, I will ask, well, how are you doing? How are you holding up? Because, I value the fact that they share such a personal thing with me, which really has nothing to do with why they're there. And although I'm fine, and a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, I struggled at first, and but they'll usually talk about their faith life and how they sought healing from God. And when someone's like that, they will say too, not just, well, I learned to recover from the pain that my ex caused me. They'll say, and I also learned to forgive myself for how I failed the marriage. See, I think the biggest problem we have in our culture right now is that everybody is very self-centered, and well, what did you do to me? I mean, in any relationship, it's two to tango. And what you're not just owning up to what you do, but one of the things that I've been doing now for years with my students at the beginning of each school year, and I learned this from Theology of the Body, is I tell them, I can never stop what what bad things will happen to you in life. I mean, you're gonna unfortunately experience, betrayal, loss, failure, all those difficult things. I go, but do you really know and believe how much God loves you? How God sees you in his eyes? Because if you do, then no matter what someone else does to you, it's not going to break you, because another person's approval is not what defines you. It's God, because God is the one who made you. And if you think about it, it's not just for divorce. I mean, I know we're focusing on divorce, but this might be a lesson for us because, unless we're the first person, like say in a marriage, to die, you got to think about the fact that if you get married, you might be the surviving spouse. My mother has been a widow now for 13 and a half years. And, she struggles with it because she loved my father very much, obviously. But I will remind her, go, well, mom, you're still a mom. You're a grandmother. You're a great grandmother. You still have, value in this world. We still look to you. And I mean, for example, and I was working at a school. I was in Los Angeles when 9/11 happened. And there was a gentleman on one of the planes coming to Los Angeles that crashed. I think he was on the one in Pennsylvania. He was 25 years old, and he'd only been married a year. He was a graduate from the school I was working at the time. I mean, I can't imagine his wife thought she'd be a widow in her early 20s. I don't know if she remarried. I don't, she may not have. She's not a divorcee, but she lost her husband. But the question is, what do you do with your life from then on out? Because you may not remarry. And I don't know. But the thing is that lost relationship doesn't define your life, even if you are the cause of that. Like, I mean, I've read articles written by people who got divorced who openly talk about how they failed their spouse and what they learned from it. And they're trying to teach people how to improve their marriages. So I don't want you to end up where I'm at. So it's just, but there has to be that commitment to healing. And I think what also helps a lot is, as much as I talk about there's a lot of self-centeredness in our culture now, I am also seeing a lot from both in the confessional and priests talking about this with people, and I've experienced this myself, to even therapists saying, look, what you've done wrong is part of your story. It's okay. Now own it and move on, because you have the rest of your life to live.
Yeah, absolutely. What good wisdom, because really, whenever we have anything happen to us in life that it's a major thing, right? It's a life-changing event. And I would certainly say that something to do with the breakup of a marriage is probably one of those huge ones. In fact, I know that I don't remember what it's called, but I know that those lists, like the list of stressors that in the psychiatric and the psychological world that they're very familiar with, what are the biggest stressors in life? And I know that one of the top three is divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for many reasons. It's the end of a relationship, but it's also so many other things that you're changing where you live many times, your finances, your children trying to manage their schooling and the schedules for visitation and things like that. So, I mean, there's tons of areas of life that it affects. So it's not even just relationship, and it's not even just spirituality, although we know that's a huge part of it, right? Maybe the
Hmm.
most important part. But so we want to be able to understand that the healing is going to come in many different ways, and it comes through prayer, it comes through education, it comes through wisdom of other people, and I do think it comes from reaching out to people who might be able to help you, whether it be a therapist or a nonprofit like us, so you can get some help, some pastoral consultations. That's what we offer. You can talk to a priest. If you're going through something, we offer the free pastoral consultations. So we'd be happy to help you with that. But it takes time. I mean, none of this is an overnight thing. I know, Carlos, you'd probably agree with that. And you've
Absolutely.
seen it with your students. Um, I would also like to just touch on, just for a little bit in this podcast, is how it affects the children and what we can do to help them. So you have students and you've seen it over and over again. What do you think helps students to feel a little more balanced during those times?
I think the most important thing is honesty and maturity. And the one thing that gives me hope, and Anne, I have to share this with you. This was amazing. I once did a, you work at a Catholic school and there's interviews, and they usually have you talk to the student first, and then they'll bring in the parents. And at this particular school, the student goes to get the parents, and this one girl walked in, and she walked in with four people. And I was like, okay. Her parents had gotten divorced, and they both remarried. And it was interesting because they both sat next to her, and then their current spouses sat next to them. And I was like, oh, well, welcome. And basically, the mother said, well, our marriage didn't work out. But, when we got divorced, we right away made a commitment to take care of her and, you know, um, be parents. And then both step parents also said something. And the stepfather said, I'm trying to like visualize this, remember who said what, but the stepfather said, yeah, we all just want what's best for her. So it was like all four of them will sit down and discuss what's best for this young lady. And I thought, well, this is adulting 101. I mean, it's like there comes a point you just got to stop complaining and you have to start moving forward. And sometimes I'm sorry to say we have to be direct about that. Because like I saw someone post this on social media one day. They said, thank you for sharing your problem with me. Would you please share tomorrow what the beginning of your solution is? And I think that, there comes a point where it's like, how do we make this work? And I've had kids, and the thing about teenagers is they are extremely honest. I had a student who once said, "Look, my father, I love my dad, but my father was not a good husband and father, and my stepfather is just amazing, and we respect him so much for stepping up and taking care of us." And then I had a girl last year in class, and this was shocking. She said, to be honest, I sometimes wish my dad would divorce my mom because she doesn't treat him with any respect. And I was just like, and she literally said, I just want my dad to be happy. And I'm just like, wow. And, and I'm not saying any of those are solutions or not solutions, but it's just, I'm looking at what I'm being told. And it's like, they're sitting there and they're, looking at the situation and being honest about it. And even beforehand, like I had a friend who proposed to a woman. We were in our mid 20s at the time. And he told me the following day she actually refused him. And when he asked her why, she told him, she goes, I really, I love you and I think you're a good guy. But she had an 8-year-old son at the time. And she said, but I will always be a mom first. And I just can't look you in the eye and say, I think you'd be a good father to my son. And I was like, wow, because we get, it's easy to get swept off our feet and get caught up in the moment. And and don't get, obviously none of us would not acknowledge the beauty and joy of marriage. But look at our families, look at our upbringing, those are all filled with bumps in the road. I mean, marriage, you're basically saying to the person, I would like to unite my complicated life with your complicated life. And we're going to, venture through these lives together. But, we don't focus on that. And I think the most important thing is we need to certainly talk about it, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves. Because from what I've been told recently, not just from students, but just in learning about divorce, a lot of times people are just being encouraged to get divorced by their friends and peers who themselves aren't happy. And it's like they just kind of want you to join the club. And it's like, that's not the healthiest people to go to. I mean, that's like, you need to really be honest about things. Um, and if there's a chance to forgive and a chance to build and slowly take those steps to reconciliation, then absolutely. But I think so many people, I think one of the big stress triggers of divorce is people regretting their decision. Like, I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm not going to ignore abuse and certain things that certainly people shouldn't put up with. But the question I would ask is, are you really sure getting divorced is the solution to your problem?
Wow, thank you so much. Again, such wisdom and lots of things for us to ponder and think about. I mean, and what you said about the seriousness of it and how to deal with it and what you've witnessed and observed with children too. I mean, children are very deeply affected by divorce. I mean, I myself am a child of divorce, and back then when my parents divorced in the 1970s, there weren't any resources, but today there are,
Mm-hmm.
as far as Catholic resources. I do want to mention one. They're friends of our foundation too. They're called lifegivingwounds.org. I'm going to say that again for those who are maybe wanting that information. Lifegivingwounds.org is a Catholic nonprofit that makes outreach to adult children of divorce. So go on their website and check out the great work that they're doing. But no, Carlos, I really think that the wisdom that you're sharing and even some of what I'm sharing is good information for our listeners because wherever you are in that spectrum, if you are separated, if you're divorced or annulled, or if you know someone or praying for some family member, we're here for you. And that's why we're doing this so that you know that our resources can help you to get to those next steps, whatever those steps are for you on this journey. So, Carlos, I just want to thank you so much again for joining me. Did you have any
You're
final
welcome.
like words of wisdom for the audience, especially maybe someone who they already are divorced and just trying to get through this time?
Yes, and this came upon my heart about 5 minutes ago. We were talking. All of that you and I have shared a lot of different resources you can go to, but I really would like to share that this would be a time to pray to Our Lady. And I would also say it's a time to pray to Saint Joseph. First of all, I would really encourage listeners to please look up the difference between a betrothal and an engagement. Because remember, betrothal was much different because if Mary and Joseph had just been engaged, Joseph would have no need to quote unquote divorce her quietly. The reason why I would say it would be a great time to pray to them and seek their guidance is because there was a moment where Joseph, for example, was convinced he was going to break the betrothal. Like, I'm going to divorce this woman quietly, but I'm going to divorce her. And Mary, of course, would have been aware of the fact that he's going to divorce me. So there was a moment during their human journey that they were, I guess you'd say, had to realize, accept, whatever, that I'm divorcing her, he's divorcing me. So that feeling of from Mary's point of view of being rejected, and from his point of view, I'm rejecting her. They felt that, and granted that there was obviously reconciliation between them, but remember the reconciliation was through the assistance of the Holy Spirit. I mean, if you think about, like, one of the things that I really ponder is, they don't really say specifically, but I am convinced that the angel's voice in Joseph's dream was Gabriel, the same angel who went to Mary during the Annunciation. And I am convinced that was something that, obviously there was trust in his heart. Him being a devout Jew knew that dreams were um a way that the divine communicated to people. So that same Holy Spirit would be the grace giver to all of us that need the strength to um, forgive, the strength to, ask for forgiveness. Because I'm certain that even though Mary, I'm sure, was ecstatic that Joseph accepted her, I'm positive Joseph, I'm sure, looked her in the eye and said, "I'm sorry for not believing you." And um, so they've experienced that feeling of divorce, if you will. And I know that in our prayers, they would direct us to the same Holy Spirit who guided them to become the holy family that was then given to the rest of the world.
I'm so glad that you brought that up about the Blessed Mother and interceding to Saint Joseph as well, because that's really the heart of this podcast series. Is that even though we're discussing these issues and problems that people have with relationships and separation and divorce, praying and interceding to Our Lady is really the key to healing. She will lead you, she will guide you in all ways. And now things don't always turn out the way we want them to in life. We know that, right? So otherwise, there would be none of these issues or problems in the world, but there are. And Mary will guide you to the Lord and guide you through the path to bring you to a deeper faith and to restoration in your life and get you to a better place, right, Carlos? I mean,
Yes.
help you to get to a better place. And that's what we're here for, too. So, Carlos, thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we'll see all of you here next month. Remember, we are the first Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.